What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Clint. I am the host of the Die Hard MMA podcast, and this is Total Madness for UFC Vegas 11. We have got Colby versus Woodley coming up here on Saturday, and I am pumped for this fight. I am absolutely pumped. This entire card is just stacked top to bottom. So at this point in time, we've got a bunch of matchups. We've got a lot of totals to talk about. And if you're not familiar with Total Madness, all we do today is discuss the unders and overs for every single fight. 1.5 rounds, 2.5 rounds. How do we think this fight is going to play out? So that's what we're doing here today. Why don't you come on, tuck up your chair, sit real nice and close to me here, and let's talk about some betting action. Kicking off the night, we've got Tyson Nam taking on Cerrone Rivera. We've got a total set here at 2.5. Remember, this is the UFC Apex finale. We are headed to Fight Island next week, so we are still in the small cage as of now, and we've seen it time and time again. The small cage forces action. What we've got here is a 2.5 juiced very ever so slightly to the under 2.5 at -115. The over 2.5 is -105. And honestly, this is a total I really like, the under 2.5. Cerrone Rivera is a kid that really relies on his ground game. He heavily relies on getting his opponents to the mat. The thing with Cerrone is what he does is sells out for that takedown, and he doesn't set it up potentially very all that well. He comes in, he's willing to eat a couple of shots to close that distance, wrap his arms around his opponent, and you just can't do that with a fighter the caliber of Tyson Nam. This guy has got absolute missiles in his fists, and if you leave him the opening to go ahead and land a bomb on your chin, he's going to do so, and he's going to do it violently. I see Tyson Nam winning this fight. If I was going to play this total over under 2.5, I would be leaning towards that under. Next up, we've got Darrick taking on TJ Laramie. We've got the total set at 1.5 for this one. We have got 1.5 -125 to the over. Under is +105. The way that I would need to look at this one is actually gonna probably be that over. So what we see with Darrick is he is a one-round fighter. He comes out hard and he gasses himself out looking for the finish early in the first. TJ Laramie is a hard-nosed wrestler with solid submission defense. This kid is going to be able to keep himself safe and basically ride out that wave. He's going to be able to defend himself until he has the opportunity to hurt Minner on the other side of this thing. I think that'll take the first round. I think that TJ Laramie is going to be on the back foot, basically looking to survive that first round, stay safe, keep this fight standing. If it hits the mat, be on your P's and Q's with the submission defense, and then once we get to round 2, Minner's got nothing left to offer. Minner absolutely is done if he doesn't get that first round submission. So at the beginning of round 2, there might be a little bit of a hairy moment, but after that, TJ Laramie takes over. Whether he's able to submit or TKO Minner, that remains left to be seen, but I think that happens about halfway through or a little over halfway through the second round. So this is not a prop that I would personally suggest playing. It's going to get hairy because this fight should end right around that 1.5 round mark. So playing with the under or over just seems a little bit sketchy to me. And even though if I had to bet it, I would be looking at the over at -125, I really don't like it because both these guys absolutely could finish this fight in the first. Next fight up, we've got Erwin Rivera taking on Andre Ewell. We've got a 2.5 once again. Over is set at -265. The under is +225. And because of that, I mean, I completely agree with this line here, honestly. Erwin Rivera is not much of a finisher at the UFC level from what we've been able to tell. Andre Ewell kind of has the same story. He's got a significant reach advantage here over Rivera. He likes to play the outside. He's got some sneaky good striking, but he's kind of a decision machine. He pieces his opponents apart over the course of 15 minutes, and Rivera is tough as nails. This kid is all heart, all grit, all determination, and if he can't get this fight to the mat, I don't see much of a path to victory for him facing off against that reach advantage. I think that Andre Ewell lands a rather comfortable decision here in this fight. I don't know that he's going to have what it takes, or that's strong. He absolutely could finish this fight. Both these guys are capable, I guess, but the way the matchup lines up, I just don't see it happening. I think the over is the bet here. However, at -265, you'd have to parlay it. I don't really know that I want to lay that kind of chalk on a total at this level of MMA. The next fight up, we've got Costa taking on Newson, and this one should be an absolute banger. Costa is a slight underdog here. We've got the total set once again at 1.5. It is -125 to the over, and it is +105 to the under. Both these guys pack absolute heat. Both these guys can finish the fight at any moment. And honestly, that's kind of how I see this thing playing out. I would be looking at the under 1.5 at plus 105. Under 1.5s are extremely difficult to get your hands on simply because everything has to go right for you to get that finish. Both men have to be willing to throw down and come out swinging for that kind of thing to happen. Well, in this type of a situation, that's exactly what we might get. Randy Costa comes out hot every single time he fights. I mean, this guy does not slow down. He is a kill or be killed fighter, and the only time he's ever been to the second round, he got choked out almost immediately. Newson, we've seen him rock, we've seen him hurt, but he comes back even harder. He has an excellent ground game, submission offense himself, and he is fully capable of ending a fight by knockout as well. I think these two are going to try to one-up each other until one of them's looking up at the lights. I would look at the under 1.5 at plus 105. Sarah Alpar taking on Jessica Rose Clark. This is one that we probably shouldn't spend a whole lot of time on. Jessica Rose Clark is a decision machine, even though she is a striker. Sarah Alpar is a natural wrestler, and she brings that with her into the cage. So because of that, this one's more than likely going to be over. We've got the total set at 2.5. Minus 355 to the over. Under 2.5 is plus 295. Really, the only way I see this fight finishing is if Sarah Alpar is able to get Jessica Rose Clark on the mat and maybe land some kind of a submission, and I would want better than plus 295 for that. Jordan Espinoza taking on David Dvorak. The over 2.5 is minus 280. We've got the under 2.5 at plus 240. And this one is fun. David Dvorak is a really violent fighter. He looks good. He's got everything that you look for and maybe a potential rising star, but he just hasn't fought anybody yet. This is really his first opportunity. Jordan Espinoza is extremely fast, very athletic, good solid wrestler, strong hips, likes to strike and play on the outside. He was on a 2-fight losing streak before he got a win over Mark De La Rosa, who has been cut from the organization. So we really don't know where Jordan is at this point. He could be a solid fighter and just maybe had a rough start to his UFC career. He could be a bottom of the barrel fighter and just barely able to squeeze by anybody. I don't have a very good read on this fight, I'll fully admit. The over is set at 2.5 once again. The over is minus 280. Jordan Espinoza trends towards decisions basically every single time, but he has been submitted. His losses are all finishes, and David Dvorak is not a slouch on the ground himself. The under 2.5 here at plus 240 might be in play, but this is another fight that honestly I would suggest taking a step back from and just kind of watching, because there's a whole lot of randomness here. We have really no idea how this one is going to go. Mara Romero Barilla taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. Congratulations to me for rattling those two names off back to back. We've got a total here set at 2.5. The over 2.5, it's a pick'em, folks. Minus 110 either side here, and I completely understand and agree that. Now, mostly with women's fights, we see them go to the judges' scorecards. Unless they've got that submission offense and a couple of rare situations knockout power, we just don't see women with much finishing ability. These days, the landscape of women's MMA is changing. We are seeing more and more finishers step into the UFC. So I think that's going to be something that we see a lot more often. However, we're still not exactly used to it at this stage. So this fight not being juiced to the over means that both these women are totally capable of finishing inside the distance. Mara Romero is a wrestler. She's a solid grappler, trains at ATT, and she has a good little submission game on her. She's on a bit of a rough skid at the moment, though. She tends to gas out in her fights, and she's been finished late more than once. Mayra Bruno Silva, she comes in here, and she is an absolute marauder. It looks like you showed her a tape of Justin Gaethje, and that's how she decided to fight. She uses leg kicks, she walks her opponents down, she's got big power in her hands. My only concern with her is she has no ground game. She gets the legs scooped out from under her easily in basically every single fight, and then she's got some decent submission defense, but she stays on her back the entire rest of the round. This is a spot where both women are fully capable of finishing. Mayra can get the knockout if she's able to keep this thing on the feet. We have seen Barella get knocked out in that kind of a situation before. If she can't get the takedowns, or even if she just gasses out over the first two rounds, she ends up getting flatlined later on in the fight. I think that this fight has a very good chance of going under. If I had to play this spot, this one I would be looking at the under 2.5, even at that pick'em price, because Barella can absolutely get the submission finish here, and Silva absolutely will be able to take advantage of Barella's weak striking defense once they are on the feet, maybe later in the rounds. The next fight up is maybe my favorite fight on the card. We've got Kevin Holland taking on Darren the Dentist Stewart. Over 2.5 is minus 175. The under 2.5 is plus 155. And folks, I don't understand this whatsoever. This is a spot that I'm really potentially looking at betting. I already have a whole lot of Kevin Holland in my pocket, so I don't know if I want to double up on this particular fight, but the under 2.5 at plus 155 looks extremely juicy to me. Kevin Holland is a fighter that kind of plays with his food. He lets the finish come to him. He's very methodical. He's very patient. He doesn't take the fight to the opportunity where he maybe has the best chance to finish it right away. He likes to box up his opponents. He likes to piece them up a little bit and then look for the finish a little bit later. That doesn't always pan out. It's not great for betting purposes because you never really know what you're going to get. But he's got a 7-inch reach advantage here in this fight, and he's taking on Darren Stewart, whose only path to victory really is the big power he holds in his hands. If Darren Stewart isn't able to hit Kevin Holland or isn't able to land those power shots, he's just going to get picked apart at the end of Holland's punches for 15 minutes, and I honestly don't know if he'll be able to take it. If he is just eating shots over and over and over, he's either going to turn into a grappler and try and take Holland down, in which case you're dealing with a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I think Holland chokes him out. Or I think he gets rocked, clipped, and knocked out on the feet. Now, Holland in his last fight got a knockout, but he took until the 3rd round to do it. That's the thing. You never know what you're going to get with this guy. You know Darren Stewart is going to be coming forward and looking for that knockout. I highly doubt we see Kevin Holland come in here and look to grapple. And honestly, if he did look to grapple, I think he would probably win via submission rather easily. Both these guys can contribute to that under 2.5. I like this spot. Plus 155 is a good line. Under 2.5 would be the way that I'd look, and I am definitely looking at it. Randa Markos taking on Mackenzie Dern. We've got the total set once again at 2.5. Over is minus 115. Under is minus 105. Once again, we have a women's fight where we have to look at this line because more often than not, these fights will go to the cards. Mackenzie Dern is an incredible submission artist. She can submit basically anybody. High-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. She's got some big power in her hands. However, her striking is extremely limited. She's very basic on the feet. Randa Markos, she's got some decent boxing. She's tough, she's durable, and she's a solid grappler herself. This total, I'd have to look at the over, honestly. I would love to say that Mackenzie Dern lands a submission here, but both these girls kind of struggle to get the takedowns. They both rely on their grappling, but neither of them are able really to get the fight to the mat where they want it to be. So this could turn into a really sloppy striking match, unless Mackenzie Dern is able to club and sub Randa Markos, rock her with a big shot and then dive on her once it hits the mat, or unless Randa Markos decides she wants to test herself and go ahead and take Mackenzie Dern down, which I think would be a very poor choice. I see this one heading to the judges' scorecards. I think the over 2.5 at minus 115, that's a pretty solid price. Johnny Walker taking on Ryan Spann. We've got the total set at 1.5, minus 120 to the over 1.5, plus 100 to the under 1.5. This is an interesting spot because both these men are explosive finishers, and we've seen them go to the cards a couple times in their recent fights. Johnny Walker has been a bit of a disappointment when it comes to his fights recently. He kind of got exposed by a couple of people. We've seen him get taken down and ground out. We have seen him get knocked out. There's been a little bit of an issue with the prospect Johnny Walker. Ryan Spann, kind of a similar story. He looked really good, won a couple fights in a row, and then he really struggled against Sam Alvey, who is a veteran in the UFC and somebody who, honestly, you probably just shouldn't be struggling against. This is a very interesting spot where I've got an itching feeling here that someone is going to sleep. I think the under 1.5 at plus 100 would be the way that I would absolutely have to look here because Spann has an offensive grappling style, but he's got a really tight squeeze. This guy can absolutely land a submission if he finds his way to the mat. Johnny Walker is really physically strong, and if Ryan Spann is able to take him down, he's going to make him work. We've seen Ryan Spann tire. In that Sam Alvey fight, he got gassed out pretty quick trying to take Sam Alvey down. So Ryan Spann can get the submission. Ryan Spann's explosive and has a big right hand as well. He could get the knockout. Johnny Walker, not much of a submission threat. He doesn't really go for it. But on the feet, obviously, he's an absolute knockout artist. And Spann might be the type of guy that decides to go ahead and strike with him because he's got that confidence in himself. Again, this is one that maybe I would say there's way too much randomness. You probably should not bet it. But if I was going to have to make a bet, I would take a look at that under 1.5 at even money. Khamzat Chimaev taking on Gerald GM3 Meerschaert. We have Khamzat, who is just the absolute biggest star the UFC has had in years. And boy, are they pushing him. Taking on GM3 here, we've got a total set at 1.5. The under is juiced ever so slightly to minus 120. The over 1.5 is plus 100. I'm buying in, folks. I like Khamzat. I know when you get a big step up in competition, we've seen a lot of these hype trains derailed recently, but I think this kid is legit. And Gerald Meerschaert, as dangerous as he is, as long as he has been around, he is just defensively unstable. He does not do what he needs to do to keep himself safe on the back end of fights. He takes a whole lot of damage, a whole lot of punishment, and I think someone like Khamzat is just going to be able to roll this guy. The only problem is I don't know if he does it in round one. I think that Gerald Meerschaert is a savvy enough veteran that he'll be able to stay alive in the grappling situations and the grappling exchanges until maybe a little bit later on. Even if they're on the feet, I think Khamzat has a huge power advantage, but Gerald Meerschaert is a tough dude. He probably will be able to mix in the grappling, mix it with the striking, slow the pace down a little bit. Khamzat is just an absolute wrecking ball. Forward pressure constantly, all the time, but I don't know if he finishes a veteran like Gerald Meerschaert in the very first round. I think maybe it takes him just a little bit longer. I would be looking at the over 1.5 at even money if I was going to play on this one, but I do think that Chimaev lands a knockout at some point in this fight. It's just a matter of when to me. We've got the co-main event, another really exciting spot here. Donald Cerrone taking on Niko Price. We have a total once again set at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 is plus 100. The under 1.5 is minus 120. These are really interesting spots, folks. We have had a ton of 2.5 rounds for the last couple of weeks, and for the first time in a long time, we've got a bunch of 1.5s where the bookies are really expecting these fights not to go the distance. And like I said, this card is just banging from top to bottom. We should get a lot of finishes, and I think it's going to be really fun and exciting to watch. Donald Cowboy Cerrone has been knocked out in 3 of his last 4 fights. Granted, those were at lightweight. Now he's going to have a little extra water around his noggin moving up to 170, but he is facing a guy in Niko Price who's got that death touch. He's one of these guys that hits so freaking hard. He can finish the fight from literally any spot you can find him. He can submit, he can ground and pound you. He's TKO'd people from bottom before, which is just unreal. And then on the feet, he is absolutely capable of knocking anybody out. He's coming off of a war with Vicente Luque, though, and that is something that has me questioning maybe the durability of Price. He didn't get flatlined in that fight. It was a doctor stoppage due to eye swelling. So it's not like he got knocked out badly, but having a quick turnaround after that kind of a war, maybe he's not all the way there. Donald Cerrone is a very, very savvy striker, and he's one of these guys that's more than willing to brawl. He starts a little bit slow. We know Niko Price does not start slow, and that might force a firefight early. I'd be looking at under 1.5 in this spot. Whether Donald Cerrone has one more spot in him or not, I think the key to this fight is putting Niko Price away early. If he's gonna win, he can't drag this thing out for 15 minutes. Donald Cerrone is not going to be able to survive the onslaught of Niko Price for a full 15 minutes, so I think he needs to get him out of the cage early, whether that's by knockout, having a slicker striking style, or submission, getting this thing to the mat and choking Price out, something like that. I think he's got to do it, otherwise Niko's going to take over and knock him out. And I would expect Niko Price doing what he does, and the durability and age of Donald Cerrone, I think that knockout comes probably sooner than later on that side as well. Under 1.5 at minus 120 would be the way I'd be taking a look on that fight. Tyron Woodley taking on Colby Chaos Covington. I am so beyond pumped for this fight. This fight is fantastic matchmaking. Should have been done a whole long time ago. It is finally here, and I am ready for it. We've got the total set at 4.5. And this is a really interesting spot to me. Tyron Woodley has been nothing but durable in his last couple fights. We saw him get rocked by my boy Gilbert Burns in his last fight, but he was able to recover, able to reset, and then he was able to go ahead and survive a full 25-minute fight. Now he's taking on Colby Covington. Colby sets a pace like nobody does, and I mean nobody. No division has a Colby Covington. His cardio is second to none. And he puts it on people, folks. His striking has improved leaps and bounds. And we saw it in the Kamaru Usman fight. His boxing and his hands are phenomenal. If these two decide to throw down, which Colby is more than willing to go to war with Tyron Woodley in the spot. And Tyron Woodley has come out and openly said that he's finally going to let loose. His last couple fights, he's kept it a little tight to the vest. He has not really gone for that finish. And this time, he's finally going to go ahead and take the opportunity to knock somebody out. Well, let's see. I'll believe it when I see it. But Colby Covington also has been working on his boxing and his power. His new coach just came out with a statement, I think earlier today, saying they found out Colby had the wrong foot forward and was using the wrong lead hand. So because of that, he has more power to offer in these exchanges. I see the bad blood playing a factor here. I think Colby Covington is going to wear on Tyron Woodley and just melt him over the course of a 25-minute fight. He sets a pace, like I said, that nobody else can really match. And Tyron Woodley is a very muscular individual. So if he does let loose like he's been talking about, if he comes out and he goes for broke and tries to take out Colby Covington, it's going to take some gas out of that tank. When it does, I think Colby Covington flurries on him. And if his coaches aren't blowing smoke up all of our asses, if his coaches are right and he has more pop in his hands, I think Colby Covington can knock out Tyron Woodley. On top of that, I think that Tyron Woodley is more than capable of knocking out anybody in the division when he's on. He's been training with Jorge Masvidal. He seems to be on point, and a lot of people are talking about how he's going to return to form here in this fight because he's got such a problem with Colby Chaos Covington. If that's the case, Tyron Woodley can land a bomb and end this fight himself. That under 4.5 at plus 180 doesn't sound bad to me whatsoever. We've got a 5-round main event non-title fight, probably the #1 contender spot, and they've got the total set here at 4.5, folks. The over 4.5 is minus 220, and I think that's because both these guys, more often than not recently, have been going the distance, but I think the stakes are higher. I think the bloodlust is higher. I think the personal beef is going to cause this thing to be a little bit more intense, and I really think Colby Covington wants to put a stamp on this fight to prove that he's the #1 contender and get back to that title fight. Same thing with Tyron Woodley. He needs to win this fight to make sure that he's really not just left in the dust as far as being a contender at 170. At his age, if he loses this fight, he's done. He's not ever getting back to a title fight. So both these guys need to win. They need to win it emphatically. I think that a knockout is totally possible on both sides of the coin here. Plus 180, under 4.5 is the way that I would be looking. There you have it. That's the breakdown, Total Madness for UFC Vegas 11. Make sure you subscribe here to Odds HQ. Do me a favor, share this video, hit that like button if you don't mind. Let me know what your favorite totals to play are here in the comments section below. And be sure you tune back in on Friday where I will be posting my post-weigh-in recap video where we have a phenomenally high rate of finding some hidden gems on a UFC card for betting material. Thank you all so much. You are awesome. Good luck on all your action this week, and let's roll.